Okay, few more definitions, and I promise we're done. Okay, some of these we've already looked at before. For example, like domain and like range, like independent and dependent variables. Independent, we know this is you're selecting. Dependent depends on your machine. All right, so if you pick up, let's say, a 2 and you throw it into that function machine and out pops a 5, guess what? The 5 is dependent on what you put into the machine in the first place. Okay? So when you're graphing then, okay, you have to remember which one is the independent, which one is the dependent. There's your independent. Your independent are the ones that you choose. You've selected those numbers to represent this function. Your dependent variables go here. So they're the output of the machine. There's your function. So that's what you're going to get out of the machine when you put these values in. So you're going to put -1 into the machine, out pops a 2. A 0 into the machine, out pops a 5. Independent, dependent. Independent, dependent. You see how it works? Okay, so now you have a table of values here. And the cool thing about the table of values is they're easy to figure out based on this equation here. And all you have to remember is what you learned in grade 6 called bed mass, right? So if you take a look at this equation, and I'm going to do it over in the corner here, your equation is y equals to 3x plus 5. We've put in a value of -1 for the x. That goes right here. So 3 times -1 plus 5. Bed mass tells us we're going to do that first. That gives you 3 times -1, -3. Plus 5, that gives you 2. There's your output of your machine. Watch again. We'll do it for the 0 here. Y equals 2, 3x plus 5. There's your x value going into there. So 3 times 0 plus 5. That's easy. 3 times 0 is 0. Plus 5 will give you, in fact, plus 5. You see the value right here. Now, the cool thing is that you can now represent this on a graph. Okay? A graph like this one right here. Okay? Now, the important thing to remember is where does the independent and dependent variable go? The independent variable, remember, is your x value. Your dependent variable is your y value. You will always put it on an x and y coordinate like this. All you have to do now is take these numbers, plot them on the graph, kind of like what they have here, and all you need to do is plot a couple of them. If you know it's a straight line, that's something that we're going to get into eventually. But what's the cool thing here is, remember, we plotted -1 here, and it popped out a +2. So at -1, which is here, out popped a 2, which is about there, and we can draw our line. The other one was at 0, popped out to be a 5, which was right there. There's our line. If we take a straight edge, we can put our line straight down like that, and that's how you represent these nice little beautiful points. So let's now actually do that. One was done for us. Let's do this one together, okay? This is your gross pay depends on the number of hours worked. So this is your typical work schedule. Notice a couple things here. Notice you can't work -1 hours. That's kind of silly, right? You can work 0 hours, or you can start at 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, and so on. So I'm getting you specific points here. You can work 0 hours. Of course, your gross pay is going to be 0. Now, here's your independent variable. There's your domain. Here's our dependent variable. Here's our range. Now, here's our graph. Bada boom. Right over here. So, here's our x, which we're going to call the hours of work. This, if you think about it, is independent because you're choosing the hours of work, or your employer's choosing the hours of work that he wants you to work for. Your gross pay depends on, guess what? That's why we call it a dependent. Your gross pay depends on how many hours you worked. So here's your gross pay here. Okay? Gross pay means, of course, before taxes. So you know and I know you're going to start off at 0, 0. But how are you going to put this graph together? Well, you know what? I'm going to skip. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, and there's 5. And then we're going to go up by 12s. So there's 12, there's 24, there's 36, there's 48, and finally there's 60. Now, notice that as I'm going up this way, I'm going by equal increments. I'm not going by 12, and then by 20, and then by 25, and so on. What's important here is each step of the way, those are always equal. They're equal amounts every step of the way. Same goes with this. From here to here is equal. From here to here is equal. From here to here is equal. They're always equal amounts. Now, let's put this in here. Okay? We started off at 0, 0. 1 is 12. 2 is 24. 3 is 36. 4 is 48. 5 is 60. Now, technically, this is a technicality, and this is where this question comes in of whether or not we should connect the dots or not. Technically, if you decide after an hour and a half to skip out, I don't think your boss will necessarily have to pay you for the extra half hour there. I don't know if that's true or not. If you worked for maybe half hours, but you know, this is like splitting hairs. They're not going to turn around and say, oh, you worked for an extra 10 seconds, you're going to get more money. Or you work for an extra 2 minutes, you're going to get more money. Usually it's on a per hour basis. Once you finish that hour, you get money. Even when it comes to a half hour, I don't think they'll pay you for a half hour. They pay you for the full hour. But just in case they do, we can put the half hour increments in there as well. Because look how nice we see the pattern going up like that, going this way. We can see the pattern. And so if we did work for half an hour, maybe your boss might give you $6. Or if you worked for an hour and a half, maybe he might give you $18, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So I put the half hour increments in there. But again, I don't think if you work 15 minutes longer, he's probably not going to pay you. So that comes up with the connection of the dots idea. Now we're not going to connect the dots because he's not going to pay you per second that you work. He's going to pay you per hour or per half hour that you're going to work, but not for like 2 more minutes, 2 extra minutes or whatever. So what kind of data is this? Is this discrete or continuous? Well, this in fact is discrete. This is discrete data because you cannot draw a line here. And by definition, if you can't draw a line, that means all the points in between have no meaning, and that's why we call it discrete.